This program contains embedded descriptive video. It was written to be accessible for blind and low-vision viewers.
Remember the simple pleasure of getting a letter in the mail?
This is a farce, as far as I'm concerned, because it doesn't take into consideration people with even slight disabilities.
I'm Anna-Karina Tabuñar. As a journalist, I've covered issues important to Canadians, from Vancouver's busy streets to Halifax's harbour. Then my vision began to change. Ever since, I've started to look at our country, our people, and how we live together through a new lens. That is what this show is all about, putting Canada in perspective. Our National Postal Service is getting rid of home delivery. For some Canadians, it's not a big deal, but for Judy Blackwell of Sackville, Nova Scotia, it's a serious problem with no solution in sight. Just west of Halifax is the community of Lower Sackville.
It's the best in the world. There isn't anybody here that wouldn't help any other neighbor.
Judy Blackwell has lived here since 1978.
It's a very mixed neighborhood. It's an ideal neighborhood. That's the best way to put it.
What isn't ideal is the state of her mail delivery.
There are 22 houses from my house to the end of this street, and they all have to go up to those mailboxes. And some of them, like myself, are seniors.
Canada Post has stopped delivering mail to her house, dropping it instead at a community box half a kilometre away.
I slipped on some hoarfrost on October 19th, 1994, and multi-fractured my right ankle. 6 screws and a rod later, I have had a problem. I don't go out on ice or anything like that. There are no sidewalks, and that's a very dangerous corner, and I am not taking a chance.
She's appealed for help from her Member of Parliament.
I'm Jeff Regan, Liberal Member of Parliament for Halifax West. We're here in my constituency office in Bedford, Nova Scotia. People are telling me, particularly people with disabilities, people who are seniors, are telling me that, they're very concerned about this because, especially in winter, they're concerned about being able to get to these community mailboxes and have access to them.
Canada Post says they're doing all they can to make the change a smooth one.
My name is John Hamilton. I'm General Manager of Communications at Canada Post. I'm standing beside a bank of community mailboxes. These would have been installed last year. One of the key things we do is ask, are you looking for a smaller cluster of boxes relatively close to your home, or maybe a larger cluster a little bit farther away in a park or another green space? What we're finding is about 90% of people, every time we ask, are looking for smaller clusters close to home. It means you need to find more locations.
At the root of the change is, no surprise, money. It's more efficient for a mail carrier like this one to bring all the neighborhood's mail to one location and sort it into individual slots, rather than spending hours walking door to door. The change is being made now because the volume of mail Canada Post has to deliver has been steadily declining since 2006. Less mail has meant less revenue.
When you look at the financial numbers, doing nothing meant huge losses within just a couple of years.
For 2/3 of Canadians, there will be no change.
Across the country today, there's about 4 million households that already had their mail delivered and their parcels delivered to a community mailbox. You have just over 4 million that get their mail in a lobby box in an apartment building or condos or a senior's residence. And then you have rural delivery and things like that.
My daughter out in Beaverbank has had it for 16 years since she moved out there. She's used to it. She's younger. But this is a farce, as far as I'm concerned, because it doesn't take into consideration people with even slight disabilities.
For their part, Canada Post says they're doing all they can.
We do know for some people, just getting to the box is going to be a challenge. And in those situations, what we do is we still deliver to the community mailbox 5 days a week. They still have extra keys so they can get people to help. But we clear the box once a week, take the mail that's in the box, and we deliver it to the door.
For Judy, the weekly delivery isn't enough. As proof, she reads a letter from a nearby medical center.
If we don't hear from you by January 13th, 2015, We will assume you no longer need physiotherapy treatment and you will be discharged from our wait list.
The problem is,
I got it on the 14th.
for others, there is a financial impact.
Well, I'm hearing from people who run small businesses that, for example, if you have a one-person operation running a store, that they have to close the shop in the middle of the day to walk down the street to get their mail. Or they may be waiting for important packages that they get on an ongoing basis. If they aren't getting that daily delivery, they're not going to get those packages. And what they're telling me is that's a problem for them. Canada Post is already proposing a two-track system because they're saying, well, we can deliver it one day a week. Now, even though we're seeing people saying we're not getting it one day a week, we're getting it one day a month, or they're not delivering it or whatever. But if Canada Post is saying we can do that, well, to people who have disabilities or people who are seniors, why not every day?
But for now, the only option Judy has if she wants her daily mail is to hobble down to the box and get it herself.
That is cold.
Welcome to our studio. Judy isn't alone. There are lots of Canadians in the same or a similar situation. Marilyn Lee lives in Oakville, Ontario, and Marilyn joins us in studio today with her guide dog, Jiffy. Thanks for coming in today, Marilyn. So you have been without postal service for at least 6 months. In a word, what's it been like for you?
It was difficult at first because we had a large snowfall on or about the day that delivery stopped. And it was next to impossible to get out because when it's icy, the dog can't tell me it's icy and go carefully. I sort of depend on her when there's no things like
So pretty
snow.
treacherous some days.
It is treacherous.
All right. Now, also in our studio is digital strategist Hamza Khan. We live in a digital age, so Hamza, is snail mail out the door?
Snail mail is not completely out the door. The rumors of its death have been somewhat exaggerated. There is still a place and there is still a need for snail mail. However, it is quickly diminishing.
Interesting. Well, we've got lots to talk about, including online shopping, so sit tight. We'll be right back. You're watching Canada in Perspective. This is Canada in Perspective.
If you look back, you go to the 50s and 60s, that was a time of, mail was just exploding at that time. When the first credit cards came out, they came with a bill. That bill came in the mail. You wanted to pay that bill, you wrote a check, you put that check in an envelope, you put it back in the mail. So there was, no matter what was happening, there was more and more mail coming in, statements and all types of things. So mail grew for decades. It was a boon for the postal industry, and we built a business to deliver that. Starting in 2006, though, the internet was really starting to take hold, and as Canadians, we took a little longer to kind of gain the trust of the internet. But in around 2006, that's when mail volume started to decline. Declined just a little bit at first, but now we're seeing about 5% decline every single year, and that's about half the revenues of Canada Post.
Welcome back to Canada in Perspective. I'm Anna-Karina Tabuñar, and today we're talking about how you get your mail. With me in our studio is Hamza Khan, a digital strategist, and Marilyn Lee, who lives in Oakville. Let's pick up where you left off. Hamza, you said there is a place for snail mail. What do you mean?
Absolutely. I imagine it's really difficult to hack into a red postal box, and snail mail is still a much more safer alternative in many ways than to some of the email alternatives that you have. It is safer, and at the same time, coming from somebody that works in the digital space, I can tell you that it feels a lot more personal to receive a handwritten note when you receive something that somebody has taken the time, effort, and energy to give you with their words and their writing. So it's a lot more personal, it's safer, but at the same time, there's also the challenge of access. So not everyone has access to the same platforms or the same email clients in which they can receive their online billing, in which they can receive information. Sometimes you need to have that physical component, that physical alternative.
Yes, and Marilyn, and going to you were talking about the danger, the physical danger of you walking out to get your mail now that Canada Post no longer delivers to your door. What is that like?
Impossible.
Impossible,
Yeah.
okay.
For the most of the winter, we had a really cold February, the coldest on record. I did telephone Canada Post, and I asked them for accommodation being mail delivery to the home. And they wanted a doctor's note. And this is where it got a little bit interesting.
Oh, do tell.
Yes, because I don't feel that I should have to get a doctor's note when I've already submitted a doctor's note to CNIB.
Yes.
10, 12 years ago. And so I have the proof, I have the card, I have the number, and I also went to dog school in Oakville, and I have the certificate from dog school to say I'm blind. So why wouldn't they accept it? I don't know. But anyway, I'm still getting mail once a week.
How would you like to see it roll out?
I think that they have to do a lot more work about the locations. That's number one.
Of the super community mailboxes?
Yes. There's some mailboxes where there's 4 components, some are 3, some with 2, and each one has 16 mailboxes. So some of them there's going to be a lot of people. And as a pedestrian, the cars have to stop and get out, get their mail, and the ones that have sidewalks, they're facing the sidewalk, so that's okay, but if they have to stop their car and get out, then they're blocking traffic. And some of the mailboxes are located on a very busy road, bus route, that kind of thing.
Yes, so a lot of other little logistical
there's little
details.
Things that they really need to work on.
Little things that make a big difference. You get it only once a week.
Once a week on a Wednesday, and I can stand that in the wintertime, but I'm allowed to go to the mailbox anytime or send somebody to go and get mail.
We're also talking about email. How much email do you do?
Not so much anymore. People have sort of backed away from email, I find.
You've backed away from email?
I haven't. Other people have. So I don't get the same volume I did, say, 5 years ago.
So your friends and family, you mean, are not emailing you as much?
No.
Okay.
No, they like Skype.
Oh, they like Skype. Okay, so you're receiving less snail mail, less email, but you're Skyping more, which is more personal, would you say?
It is. It's as good as having the person in the room, I think.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about online shopping. Marilyn, do you do any online shopping?
No.
No, okay. Hamza, what are you seeing in terms of trends in online retailing, online shopping?
It's becoming increasingly more accessible for everyone to participate in the buying and selling of goods online.
Okay.
I myself do quite a bit of online shopping, and I've even started dabbling with this idea of having a virtual assistant process a lot of the payments, and so there's that extra step between purchasing something online and having an intermediary to support that. Call it like the Uberification of the world. Everything needs to be a little more personalized, everything needs to be a little quicker.
Okay.
At the same time, though, you have applications like Square, like Shopify, that are making it easier for myself to list my products and my services and sell them online. And so more and more power is being given to the everyday person to participate in the buying and selling of goods online.
Right, the democratization of retail. And so how would a retailer become more accessible online?
A lot of times what happens is the retailer sometimes sacrifices accessibility in favor of good design. Our behavior and expectations around the web are changing rapidly. Every single day we're expecting more and more from our web applications. But the one thing that we forget is that it's still an issue of access. It's still an issue of a level playing field for the internet. Not everyone has the same experience on the internet, whether you're limited by any sort of physical disabilities or whether you're limited by access to technology. It's not the same for everyone. So what we could do is be more intentional about how we utilize AODA standards. Okay. The same standards that you would apply to any other website should also apply to the online shopping experience. We're talking about alt tags, we're talking about descriptions for photos, we're talking about a walkthrough of the fields and the drop-down menus. We're talking about, especially for e-commerce sites that have video on them, to transcribe them. I know it takes a couple more minutes, but it goes a long, long way.
Yeah, and a perfect example of that is a friend of mine shops on her iPhone. She would love to do clothing shopping, but it's not accessible. She has no idea what a dress looks like. She can get the color, but apart from that, she's lost. So that retailer has just lost her business. Hamza, if you can weigh in, how can businesses make that shift from traditional snail mail and Canada Post delivery to online?
It's a great question, and I have to preface that by saying it doesn't have to be an either-or scenario. I would encourage businesses to embrace the genius of and. So on the one...
The genius of?
Of and. So
Of
instead
and.
of either
Okay.
or,
Right.
just embrace and. It's not a binary. It's not just snail mail. It's not just the online. You have to make the transition to online because increasingly the way that we're interfacing with businesses and the world, rather, is online. At the same time, though, there are folks in the community, there are folks that comprise our cities and the country that don't have the same level of access. So what they could do to make that transition is to be, again, very intentional about the folks that are on the periphery, on the fringe. They already know who's going to buy their products. They
Okay,
already know.
so suppose you want to get Marilyn on your website. What would you do?
First things first, I would do a thorough AODA scan and make sure that it's compliant. I would make sure that everything has all tags, that it's accessible via e-reader, that somebody who's going through it with a voice prompt is able to read it, that the text is legible, again, crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's as far as AODA is concerned, and then transcribing every single video and making sure that, especially for products, that there's a description of that product, that you're talking about its size, its color, its weight, its fabric. That's how I would essentially make the online shopping experience more accessible for Marilyn.
Marilyn, what do you make of everything he's just said?
Same thing about all technology stuff.
What's that?
I think that it's so much easier to go to a store and actually feel the merchandise. And because I can't see very well at all, can't tell colors, can't tell, you know, unless somebody holds it up or tries it on or it's a bright white or something. It's just easier to do it by feel.
Marilyn and Hamza, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we're going to hear what Canadians coast to coast have to say about the boom in online shopping.
I think it's boring. I love to go into a little shop and kind of see what I'm getting, and I try to buy local as much as I can.
You're watching Canada in Perspective. This is Canada in Perspective. Welcome back to Canada in Perspective. I'm Anna-Karina Tabuñar. Well, we've talked about the Postal Service and how you get your mail, but something else is changing. Not only the how, but the what. Handwritten letters are disappearing while packages from online retailers are skyrocketing. What does the boom in online shopping mean for people who already suffer from isolation? We took that question to the streets of Canada.
I absolutely shop online.
Books and shoes, mostly.
I would buy household stuff online because it doesn't have to fit, and I would buy certain clothes online.
Sometimes electronics.
And sports equipment.
I sit down on my laptop, spend the time, look at the dress front, back, what it's like, the reviews, and then I say, okay, add it to my cart.
I order hobby things they're obscure, niche things that can't be found at local hobby shops, so I have to order them from Toronto or Seattle or Hong Kong.
Usually I would buy things online that aren't tactile, so I don't usually buy clothes online, so I like to feel them and try them on.
I order gifts to be shipped to people who, and I don't even have to touch them. I have a brother who lives in Japan. I can order online and have them shipped directly to Japan.
Anyone who's living away from a major city, it's going to be easier to buy online.
It's just so much more convenient.
I think it's boring.
Right now we're at the Halifax Seaport Farmers Market. This year we're celebrating, I think it's 275-year anniversary of a continuously running market.
We're in Granville Island. Granville Island's like a hot tourist spot, but also kind of a cool cultural arts center in Vancouver. There's a lot of theater, and then there's a lot of local shops.
There's a lot of things that you could do online, but part of the joy of shopping is like the joy of coming here. Yeah. And people come here because it's something to see, but there's also lots of things that they can look, and the joy of being around people and seeing fresh fruit right there.
I know a lot of people do a lot of their shopping online, but then we miss, we're not going to have like a great city if we don't have little boutiques. It all be dying.
You lose a lot of local business, and you lose the experience of going out and picking something out.
I love to go into a little shop and kind of see what I'm getting, and I try to buy local as much as I can.
I think that can be actually a real shame, because then they can be homebound and isolated, and it's almost can be too convenient. I mean, And I think it's
that's more a problem with teenagers. My son wouldn't leave the basement. We're back in studio with Hamza Khan, a digital media strategist, and Marilyn Lee of Oakville. So clearly the convenience of online shopping does come at a cost, isolation. So Hamza, you know, we talk more and more about social media. It seems that everybody's connected, but are they?
It's funny you say that. I was just thinking about something that I come across all the time when reading up on social media and where we're going, and the phrase is, everyone is connected, but no one is connecting. Again, everyone is connected, but no one is connecting. I think the extrapolation of the scenario that we're in right now, if you were to take it to the nth degree, you'd end up with a scenario very similar to, I'm not sure if you've watched WALL-E by Disney and Pixar, where everyone is tethered to some sort of device at all times, and they become increasingly, if not just indelibly, dependent on these devices, and they wouldn't know what to do in their absence or if they were to malfunction.
Well, I don't think we have that fear with Marilyn. So after hearing about online shopping, Marilyn, do you think we could convince you to come online with us and do some online shopping?
I think so. I think that hearing what other people were saying is sort of giving me a prompt to sort of buy things like pruning shears or garden gloves or something like that.
Gardening gear. Okay, Hamza, you've got to get on this, okay? So after this, you got to help her shop?
Absolutely.
All right,
and electronics, too.
And electronics. The shopping list keeps growing. So maybe after this, we can go to a computer. You can get her all set up?
Love it, yep.
Get the credit card ready,
so
Marilyn. Okay, well, thank you both so much for coming in today. And we'd like to thank you for joining us. We always appreciate comments and feedback from our audience. Drop us an email at cip@ami.ca. And you can learn more about our original programming at ami.ca. Host and contributing editor, Anna-Karina Tabuñar. Executive producer, Anne-Marie Varner. Writer-director, Jeff Blundell. Associate producer, Orna Maguire. Researcher, Harriet Luke. Production coordinator and researcher, Kenzie Brooks. Director of photography, Gurjeet Mann. Series editor, Paul McNulty. Assistant editor, Joe Cunningham. Wardrobe provided by Twiss & Weber. Produced for AMI by Varner Productions Limited. For Accessible Media Inc., DV consultant, Ron Rickford. Manager production, Kara Nye. Director Programming, Brian Perdue. Vice President Programming and Production, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2015, Accessible Media Inc.
An Accessible Media Incorporated original production.